Okay, welcome to the second trig lesson here. And this is going to be on converting between degrees and radians. And we did this on the unit circle. If you look back at the unit circle here, we had degrees, 30, 45, 60, and then the radian measure of that same angle. We use radians a lot more when it comes to calculations, so that's why we're doing radians. But radians and degrees, they're both measures, ways to measure angles. So it converts. Pretty simple. When you have a radian and you want to convert it to degrees, you are going to just multiply by 180 over pi. Now, one way to remember this is degrees never have pi in them. 360, 330, there's no pi's. So you have to divide by pi to get the pi's canceled here. So anyways, we got 180 divided by 3 is 60. So pi over 3 is the exact same as 60 degrees. Now we're going to convert this. We're going to convert actually degrees to radians. You got this written backwards. But 200 degrees, hopefully you can figure this out, but you're going to multiply by the inverse of the last one, pi over 180. So multiply across the numerator, 200 pi, multiply across the denominator, 180. We're going to cancel or simplify this. So we have 200 and 180. I know they're both divisible by 10, so that's 20 over 100 or 18, and then 20 18ths, reduce them by probably by 2, so that's 10 over 9. So it's 10, don't forget the pi, over 9. So remember, radians always has a pi in it. And then we have convert a radian measure to degrees. So now it's negative. Not really a big deal. When it's negative, you're going to do the exact same thing. So negative degrees, that is just going, instead of measuring degrees from the x-axis to positive x and going counterclockwise, we just go clockwise, and that's how you get a negative degree measure. But anyways, multiply here, it's the same thing, pi over 180. Not going to bore you with this. It's going to be negative 150 pi over 180, and simplify numerator and denominator. We're going to divide top and bottom by 30. So negative 5 over 6. This is negative 5 pi over 6. Moving on. We're going to find the exact values of the trigonometric functions. So the exact values, so cosine of 30. So 30 degrees, one thing I do is I kind of draw a quick little measure. And so 30 degrees, kind of something like this. And if we're looking at the trig function here, here's the 90-degree angle. 30 degrees, the height is smaller than the length here. So we know that if you look back at the unit circle, this is the 30-degree angle here. And square root of 3 over 2 is a bigger number than 1/2. So the square root of 3 over 2 is the length here, and the 1/2 is the height. When you're looking at 30 degrees, the length here is going to be the square root of 3 over 2, and the height is the 1/2. So cosine is, with these you have the x values is always the cosine, the y values is always the sine. So if we're looking at the cosine of 30, so 30 is here, the cosine is the x value, which is the square root of 3 over 2. That's just your answer. That's the exact. You can put it in your calculator to check it, but that's exact. Sine of 30. So the sine of 30, so you got x is cosine, y is the sine. So if this is again 30 degrees here, that's 30. The sine is the y, that's 1/2. Now we have tangent of 30. Tangent is equivalent to the sine over cosine. So sine divided by cosine. So tangent of 30 is the sine, so 1/2 of 30. I guess I should write that. This is the first time you've seen this. So we got sine of 30 divided by the cosine of 30. And since in the previous problems we found these, the sine of 30 is 1/2. And that is divided by the cosine of 30, which is the square root of 3 over 2. Now we have a fraction divided by another fraction. This is going to be where you're going to keep that first fraction the way it is, change that division to multiplication, and do the reciprocal. So multiply by 2 over square root of 3. For the second fraction, keep it, change it, flip it. Multiply straight across, you get 2 over 2 square root of 3. Could have just simplified these 2's here, but in this case, we're going to look at 2 divided by 2 is 1. I'm going to bring this down. You have 1 over square root of 3, and you think, oh, I'm probably done. No, this denominator cannot be a square root in a simplified version. So you have to multiply by that denominator, square root of 3. And you get the numerator to be the square root of 3 over square root of 3 times the square root of 3 is 3. And this is now your final answer. So the tangent of 30, you can check this on your calculator, but tangent of 30 is the square root of 3 over 3. So the tangent of 240. So for this, I would look back at a unit circle. So if we're starting at 0 here, and you go around, when you get to here, that's 90 degrees. When you get a little further, and you go halfway, that's 180. We need 240. If we keep going, this is 270 here. 240 is just 30 degrees short of 270, so we're talking about this angle right here. So that is the angle we are talking about, 270 or 240 degrees. And so we look here, we have the cosine of this is negative 1/2, and the sine is the negative square root of 3 over 2. So let's look back at our problem. So we have the tangent of 240. So we need to know what sine of 240 is, because tangent is sine divided by cosine. And we know that the sine of 240 is the square root of 3 over 2 divided by the cosine, which we found to be negative 1/2. When you do this, we got to keep it, change, and flip it. So square root of 3 over 2 times negative 2 over 1. Simplifying, you got 2 and negative 2, that becomes negative 1. It becomes negative square root of 3 over 1, which is just negative square root of 3. There's your answer. Now looking at a negative, so tangent of negative 240. So let's look back at the unit circle. So negative 240. You might think, well, negative 240, that's got to be the same thing. No, it's not. Negative. So we're going negative now, so counterclockwise. So that's negative 90, negative 180, and just short of the negative 270 is here. So that is negative 240 degrees. And at that point, we look up, and so we have negative 1/2. So that's a cosine. and square root of 3 over 2 is your sine. So you have square root of 3 over 2 and negative 1/2. So we have sine is the square root of 3 over 2 and then over negative 1/2. I actually just looked, I'm sure you guys are screaming at me, but if you look back at the previous problem, I missed a negative. So that should be negative, negative, which in turn changes this to a positive square root of 3. And down here, this is going to end up being the same as what it was up here. So we have, and it doesn't always work out this way. So we have square root of 3 over 2 times negative 2 over 1, and this just simplifies as negative square root of 3. And then down here we have cosecant. Cosecant is, this is the sine, so it's 1 over the sine, so it's the inverse of sine. So we look for the sine of 135, I think is the easiest way to do it. So sine of 135, we're looking at sine of 135, so we're going positive, we're at 90, 120, 135. So sine of 135, we go out on that ray, you have, remember x is the cosine, the y is the sine. So sine of 135 is the square root of 2 over 2. So let's look back. So this is the square root 2 over 2. Well, we need to do 1 over the sine. So what that does, so the cosecant of 135 equals 1 over the square root of 2 over 2. So just keep it as 1, change it to multiplication, and flip the second one. So you get 2 square root of 2. And you should be saying, well, Mr. Johnson, we cannot leave the square root of 2 in the denominator. That is not simplified in math. So square root of 2 over 2 we need to multiply by. And you get the numerator to be 2 square root of 2. 2 times 2 in the denominator is, or square root of 2 times the square root of 2 is 2. Cancel them out. And you get it to be the square root of 2. So the cosecant of 135 is the square root of 2. And last problem, we have the cotangent. So the cotangent of 4 pi over 3. Alright, let's look back at the unit circle. The unit circle, so now we're going to talk about radians. And this is 0 radians, or 0 pi. Up at 180, it is pi. One revolution around is 2 pi. So in the middle, so you take pi and you cut it in half, and you get half a pi, pi over 2. And if you cut that again in half, so that's right down the middle here at 45 degrees, that's pi over 4. And so we have, if we cut this in half over here, it might be easiest to be able to convert this to fourths. So this is the same thing as 2 pi over 4 at 90 degrees. And pi is the same thing as 4 pi over 4. And I'm just doing this to make it easier to be able to see what 3 pi over 4 would be. So halfway in between 4 pi over 4 and 2 pi over 4 will be 3 pi over 4. So right here. If you don't like radians, you can go to degrees if that helps you with finding which angle we're talking about, which ray. So we were talking about the cotangent of 3 pi over 4. So you got to remember negative square root of 2 over 2 and 2 or square root of 2 over 2. So cotangent of 4 pi over, oh my bad, I did 3 pi over 4, we gotta do something else. I'll erase this and I'll put up what's needed. Alright, we got it figured out. So I converted 4 pi over 3 to 16 pi over 12. And when I was working it out, I noticed that all the denominators of the radians, all the greatest common, or the least common factor would be, the denominator would be 12. So I converted everything to 12s. So 4 pi over 3 is the same thing as 16 pi over 12. Also we have half here is 6 pi over 12, or a quarter. Halfway, pi is the same thing as 12 pi over 12. And then what I did is I converted each one of the 30-degree angle to 2 pi over 12. And so I added 2 pi over 12 over here to 12 pi over 12 to 14 pi over 12, and then it's 15, 16. So we're looking here. And so we have the cosine is negative 1/2, the sine is negative square root of 3 over 2. All the way down. So we have this as cotangent. Cotangent is the same thing as 1 over tangent, so we have to find tangent of 4 pi over 3. And then do the reciprocal of it. So the tangent is the sine of 4 pi over 3 divided by, so sine over cosine of 4 pi over 3. So sine of 4 pi over 3, so back, is negative square root of 3 over 2, and the cosine is negative 1/2. So we have sine square root of 3 over 2 negative, and negative 1/2. So cotangent is, just do the reciprocal of that. Flipping it, and then we have keep it, change it, flip it. And canceling it out, you get 1 over negative, no, both negative, square root of 3, so both negatives are going to cancel. You get square root of 3 over 3 is your answer. Come to class with questions. Thanks.